but I'm actually talking about right now today in the United States of America. Because what just happened in Louisiana is not about just policy. This is about housing. This is about your life. This is about your family and your community. Let me share something with you. There are three very things that are important, and I'll give you four. But number one, you must have food. If you have no food, you cannot live. Food should be important in the United States of America. Number two, you have to have clothing. Go around butt naked, you end up in jail. Number three, you have to have housing. Housing is very important, some type of housing. And I'm pretty sure you don't want to stay on the streets and you don't want to stay in a shelter. So listen up. Housing should be very important. And number four, why number four? Because number four is money, and you have to have money to have all three. Isn't that something? But it's very, very true in the United States of America. So let's get into today's topic. Again, how is this affecting housing? It's affecting housing because when they are redistricting stuff and there are certain people that you are there that you're voting for, if those people are not having your best interests at heart, then that's going to affect the things that are most important to you. That's why you need to know what's going on and how you're being affected, right? All these friends y'all be talking, girl, let me tell you, did you hear about Cardi B? You should be saying, girl, let me tell you, get on Facebook, girl. Let me tell you what new law I found out. Girl, let me tell you about what's happening with my company. Girl, did you hear? They're about to have a layoff, girl. Let's see what we need to do to transition. Girl, what we need to do, girl. Let's put our thinking cap, girl, on. Girl. They talking about the company stocks going down. We need to be paying attention. Girl, did you hear? Girl, did you know in the neighborhood that they did a redistricting in the map and this is what's going on? Girl, did you hear about such and such? Girl, did you hear that new developers are coming in and they about to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G? Well, how is that going to affect us? I ain't saying don't gossip if you don't want to gossip. I'm just saying you better know how to gossip. Now, I do want to say this. Now, housing is not separated from voting. Housing is not separated from legislation and is not separated from laws. The land is associated with law. Don't forget that. Who gets resources? Who gets repairs? Who gets prioritized? Who messages get heard and who gets ignored? All of this is important, you guys. All of it. All of it. And you know what? You can't depend on everybody all the time. What if somebody don't want to educate you? What if somebody is in office and they're not giving you the tea on your life like you need it? Well, you better be going to find out what your cup of tea is. And in this case, housing, in this case, the districts you live in this case, the leaders that are in your area, in this case, the politicians that dealing with the laws in those areas. You understand that? I also made a video not too long ago about Jasmine Crockett, politicians, listen up. The reason why that was very important is because you have to understand you can have the best person, right? You can have the best person you vote for. They can only do so much. So they make sure legislation, they make sure laws in place, they make sure this stuff, right? But if boots are not on the ground, how is those laws being enforced? So I made a video about that too. Because let's just say Jasmine Crockett is good at making sure certain legislation is done in the Dallas area or certain laws are put into place, all this kind of stuff. Cool. But if there's not boots out there on the ground, because remember, all kind of people work in corporate, all kind of people work in housing, all kind of people work in nonprofit associations, right? So then there's picking and choosing. Then you're dealing with immigration. That's a very real thing. People are trying to get more of their people in, then more of you in. You understand what I'm saying? And even though people don't want to admit that, those things happen, and that is true. You know it, and I know it, right? It's not just saying something, just be saying something. These things are actually real. You understand that? So you have to understand, you have to have boots on the ground. It's not just about, oh, these laws, oh, this, that's fine. But if the law is not being enforced, then what does it matter? We have jaywalking laws in the United States of America. People jaywalk all the time. Why? Because it's not being enforced until somebody but get hit or something bad happens, right? So it is with housing, right? They have these beautiful things with housing. You can get this and you can get that. But because it's such a picking and choosing system, but because people are not staying informed about what's going on in their areas, they too busy up there in the Cardi B business. They too busy up there gossiping about Nicki Minaj. They too busy this and this and that. And they're not educating themselves, but other people are. And then you wonder why they getting what they getting and moving ahead. So that's what I'm saying, guys. We got to change that. We got to change that. And right here at TCLN Network, where we educate to elevate, where we don't just consume news, we take those different topics, we make them relatable, like what I'm doing now, letting you know how very important it is. And for those of you who are out there saying, well, honey, I'm good, I'm highly blessed, and I'm favored, I ain't worried about that. You don't know what's going to happen in a year from now. You don't know what's going to happen in 2 years from now. So make sure, do you understand what I'm saying, guys? Make sure that you know your districts, you know the numbers in the areas you live in, and you know who's doing what in your areas. Okay? You got to. Nobody's going to take you by the hand. Nobody's going to do it for you guys. You guys have got to do this, okay? It's very, very important. This is where the leadership lesson comes in at. There is twofold when it comes to leadership, right? So you're going to have leaders in your world. That's just how the world works. You're going to have leaders. Those leaders come in the form of politicians. They come in the form of business executives. They come in the form of churches. They come in the form of all kind of things, but they're known as leaders, right? They're known as people that is supposed to have information, and these people are supposed to be helping you with this information, right? So when you have districts and housing and all this kind of stuff, the reason why you vote, because you voting, because you're thinking that someone is going to have your best interest at heart. And when you put them in office, to make sure that they are doing things that are in your best interest, right? That's one step of leadership. But another step of leadership is you, right? You. This is why this is known as the Creative Leadership Network. This is a network. We get creative. You understand what I'm saying? We understand that I take the news. I make sure that you don't walk away empty-handed, that you understand what something is talking about, why it's important. Do you understand that? And how it relates to you and how it's important to you. Do you understand that? That's what TCLN is about. So let's look at the leadership lens right now, right? So this is where we must examine leadership. When you are voting for people, guys, right? When you are looking at housing, first you want to look at what's important. What's important about a headline? What's important? Are you going to die? Are you going to suffer because you don't know who Cardi B's sleeping with? No. Are you going to die? Are you going to suffer because you got pissed because Nicki Minaj is over there with Trump? No. None of that stuff you're going to die from. But what's going to happen to you if you lose your job and you can't find a job right away? You understand what I'm saying? And you didn't pivot because you're not in the know, you're not researching, you're not understanding your industry, you're looking at the news and you're like, oh, that's just the way it is, and you're not taking it seriously. That's what's going to affect you. That's what's most important, guys. Okay? Okay, you can easily look and say, oh, and you can watch a few Tasha K and say, oh, okay, I see what's going on. This what's happening with Will Smith. This what's happening with Jada. Okay, that's all cool, fine, and dandy. But the time and the value that you put in that, you have got to put into what's important to you. We're going to examine what's important right now. What's important is voting is being affected. You understand that? What's important is that this can affect your housing, your living. This can affect your life. You understand that? I know I keep saying stuff, but you need some reiteration. You guys need to get how important this is. You need to get this. And this is what I want you to understand. Housing. In early 2026, New York City housing. Now, I'm talking about New York right now, but I want you to understand this applies across the states. I'm just using New York as an example. Do you understand this? This applies to wherever you stay at. Where you stay at, know your districts, know your laws, wrapped around housing, wrapped around jobs, wrapped around business, wrapped around the things that are important to you. You got to know this stuff. You got to be in the know. In early 2026, New York Housing Authority residents, those living in city public housing projects, expressed significant frustration at being excluded from Mayor Zoran Madami's rental ripoff hearings. While the administration framed these hearings as a platform for tenants to call out negligent landlords, residents and advocates highlighted that several ways they felt that their voices was not heard and they were placed on the sideline. This is why y'all got to stop having entertainers and rappers thrown at y'all, but then you're not getting what you want. That has to stop. And the only person can stop that is you. Exclusion from public testimony. The initial rental ripoff. Hearings explicitly restricted public testimony to tenants of privately owned buildings. Residents were reportedly banned from sharing their grievances in the same public forum as private sector renters. They were redirected to resource tables rather than being allowed to speak on record. New York housing residents who attended were often directed to separate resources and tables and told that their specific issues would be addressed at a later date. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine living in public housing, dealing with some of the worst issues? Y'all know how New York is. I want to stop a little bit because I want to brag a little bit about Dallas. I want to brag on where I was born and raised, honey. I can't brag about everything because they got a lot of issues they need to fix with jealousy, hatred, envy, police officers arresting people, stealing stuff, people doing stuff. They got to fix some issues. But the one thing I want to brag about, you know how they say give good rapport where good rapport is good? Well, I want to brag about Dallas, y'all. Let me stop a minute, okay? You're going to learn something. Dallas, Texas had something back in the day known as Walker Settlement, right? Dallas has always been innovative. They've always been ahead of time when it came to projects. I remember staying in South Dallas projects when I was a young girl back in the 80s when I went to H.S. Thompson. And Dallas would renovate these projects, right? They would go inside, they would keep them up to par. So you always had nice furnished areas. So I never got to experience the projects that New Yorkers talk about or Chicagoans talk about, or these big cities when they talk about rats and roaches and infestation. Because the one thing in Dallas, I know when I grew up, I can't speak for everybody. You had West Dallas, East Dallas, South Dallas. I was out of South Dallas, the big Ferris wheel where you have the Texas State Fair. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? Even if you ever visited, you know what I'm talking about. That's South Dallas. And they were always, guys, just good. They were always good at keeping the projects up, right? And so I give that to Dallas. And a little bit later in the 90s and stuff like that, what Dallas did, they said, okay, we're going to reconstruct. So what they would do with the projects is they would turn them into townhomes. Like literally, you look like you was living in luxury in public housing. Like seriously, guys. But this was their strategy, and I loved it. I loved it. You know what their strategy was? Oh, we're not going to sit up here and renovate for you guys and make things look good for y'all. And y'all think y'all going to sit back and smoke weed and drink beer and act a fool and tear up stuff? They had some of the strictest policies. They took inspections seriously. And that's what kept the upkeep of the properties. You understand what I'm saying? And then a little bit later, that's when Walker Settlement came in. Because what ended up happening is that Dallas got strategic. They said, okay, we want to give people opportunity to not just stay in the projects, but to go further out in places like Plano. in places like really nice areas. You know what I'm talking about, y'all. You from Dallas, you know what I'm talking about, right? So they said, okay, we want to give people opportunity to live even better. Okay. And so what they started doing is that the people inside of these places, they was like, oh, we don't want them out here, honey. So then their lawsuit came about. So it was DHA, Walker Settlement, versus the people. I don't know if it was a Plano or it was one of those cities, right? But anyway, versus the people, right? Guess who won? DHA won, Walker Settlement won. And guys, this gave people opportunity to get outside of environments that they've always known and experience something different. But let me tell you something. When you came to Dallas Housing Authority, baby, they didn't play. They did strict housing, because they like, y'all not going to embarrass us like that. We're not going to fight that hard for you. Then you get out here with beer bottles, acting the fool. This was the very thing the people didn't want out here. So they made sure they stayed very strict, right? But they gave such beautiful opportunity. And I have to give it up for Dallas when it comes to that. Dallas was always doing stuff like that. So, hey, New York City, all you big cities, if you want to learn, go over there and talk to Dallas. Now, I'm not quite for sure what's happening lately because remember, times change. Different people get in office. Some people care as much and some people don't. So I haven't checked into it lately. I just know over time that those were some of the things that was happening. So if y'all guys want to know how to do all that, go talk to Dallas. Go talk to Dallas, Texas, baby. They got the scoop, the tea, the ice cream, and everything you need with some sprinkles on top too. Now, to get back what I was saying, right? In New York City, some people felt excluded. Their voices felt excluded. They over here dealing with rats, roaches, slum landlords, all this stuff not being fixed in the hood, in the projects, and they feel excluded. Now, they don't feel excluded when you throwing an entertainer up there saying, vote this way, vote this way. But then when it comes time for their voices to be heard, they feel excluded. This is why it's important that you're going to stop this entertainment stuff. It's okay to love your entertainers, but you're going to let your entertainers know you getting down to business. You getting down to business. You're going to start doing your research. And you don't have to be an Einstein. You don't have to go to college. They got AI, baby. If you don't understand something, just copy and paste it. Stick it in AI. Stick it in Chat GPT. Say, can you break this down to me? And let me know what these terms mean. Let me understand, because I need to know. They got all that for you today, guys. No excuses. Join places like this, TCLN Network. Get your Tasha K in. Get your all your peeps in. That's fine. But make sure that you're spending more time around the issues: food, housing, clothing, jobs. If you're working, you need to know about your field. You need to know what your position is. You need to know what are the laws wrapped around what's going on. Research your company. Is my company doing good? Are there going to be future layoffs? See, just imagine if you was taking time to do all of that and people were teaching you that, you would have been prepared. You'd be like, honey, let me find me a job now. I ain't trying to get put out. I ain't trying to live at the shelter. I ain't trying to be at the super line kitchen. But see, everybody wants y'all entertained, but ain't nobody giving y'all what y'all need. Make sure y'all hitting that subscription button. Hit that subscribe. And make sure, too, that you sharing this with people that need it. Everyday people you hang out with. Let's build this community up. Let's build this community up. Okay? And if you got a little money, you got some money on you, go on and support financially. PayPal, Cash App is right there in the description. $5, $7, $20, $30, $40, $50, whatever you can do. Support. Okay? Support. It's going to count. It's going to add up, right? Support, guys. Now, just to give you a little insight, I'm going to hit a couple of media outlets just so you can understand what was being reported by the people of New York, right? The rental ripoff hearings had multiple reputable outlets who had reported that New York City Housing Authority residents felt marginalized. They felt explicitly excluded during the early stages of Mayor Zohran Madami's housing initiatives. Okay. Now remember, he was doing all this talk. You guys can go back and do research. What was he saying? It made it seem like everybody was going to be included, right? But people saying that's not true. That's why you guys need to do research. Because let me give you an example. Let's just say you went and sat down and said, who is this man? What has he done before? Not just for people that's just like him, but what has he done for Black people before? You understand what I'm saying? Because the majority of people who stay in public housing are what? The Black people, right? You got some Hispanics too, but the majority of what? Black folks. You got some immigrants too, but again, Black people. Okay? Okay, let's be real. Majority of people who stay in public housing are Black people and Hispanics. And then you have some other immigrants or races too, right? And then the people who stay in low income areas are a lot of immigrants, right? And Black people, right? So you know this is true. Just know your demographics, know your area. Every state is different. You got border states. When you're dealing with border states, you're dealing with a lot of Hispanics. You're dealing what I call Latinas. So a lot of Latinas and stuff like that, right? And you're dealing, those are your border states, right? So I'm in Texas, that's a border state. You got Blacks, Hispanics, whites, you understand what I'm saying? And then other races. California, that's a border state. You understand that? Phoenix, border states. Know your states. Chicago, that's a Midwest state. It's not necessarily a border state, but it's a Midwest state. But then know who's there. Colorado, you understand what I'm saying? So you understand the different people you're dealing with, different races you're dealing with. So when you have people that come into office, you have to understand. I understand you talking about all people, but do all people include us too? Okay. So the New York Post reported on February 15, 2026, that the hearings would effectively ban the housing. That it would effectively ban NYCHA tenant complaints by focusing exclusively on private sector landlords and renters. Now, even though it seemed like everybody was going to be included, this is what was actually happening. CBS New York noted that NYCHA residents representing 1 in 16 New Yorkers felt slapped in the face because the RSVP process, reservation process, initially categorized them as ineligible for the same platform as private tenants. Y'all get this? So this is what was happening. Fox 5 New York covered and countered meeting in the Bronx organized by Kevin McCall and the Crisis Action Center, where residents argued that the mayor was ignoring the landlord in his own backyard while targeting private property owners. Okay, so that's just what some of the outlets were reporting. This is the different feelings and thoughts that were coming from different people. So even though Madami was talking about the rental ripoff and that he was ready to start dealing with this injustice that was going on in New York and the residents not being taken care of, certain people felt excluded. Do you understand that? Why did the people who lived in the projects and public housing felt left out of the rental ripoff equation? There's something known as HPD, and it's distinct from NYCHA. Okay, so HPD oversees private property and city finance affordable housing developments, while New York City Housing Authority is a public benefit corporation that specifically manages and operates the city public housing projects. This is what I'm talking about when I say you guys need to know your stuff. Y'all know who Cardi B sleeping with. You know who Set Off sleeping with. But you don't know the distinguishment between these two, because this is what affects who was getting put in and who was getting left out. So let's just say I lived in public housing, right? Let's just say, okay, so if I live in public housing, what area do I live in? You got different projects in different areas. That's going to let me know what district I'm in. Every district has a number, right? So once I research that number, I go to chat and say, hey, chat, this is the public housing I live in. This is the number I live in. And you don't have to live in public housing, whether you live in a low income area, it don't matter. Whether you stay in apartments, it don't matter. This is going to be applied to everything. And then you say, Chad, this is the number, area, this and this and that. Tell me all the leaders in this area. Tell me all the politicians represent this area. I want you to give me a breakdown. Who's the governor? Who's the mayor? Who's the senator? Who's this? Who's that? Who's the city council? You understand? And then you take it further. You don't have to do it all at once, guys. You can do it 10 minutes a day. Copy and paste, put it in a document. And then you say, okay, so then you start digging into the names of these people. Who are they? What they represent? Who they represent? Do they represent all people? Do they, they may say they do. Go look at a few clips on them. But have they benefited Black people? If you're a Black person, you understand what I'm saying? What do they feel about immigration? What do they feel about jobs? What have they actually done? You're going to dig deeper and deeper. I'm going to give you an example of that a little bit later so you guys can understand how to put that together, right? It's going to be short and quick, but it's at least going to give you some insight so you can really see where I'm coming from, right? That's important, guys. You can't sit up there and know all Cardi B business and don't know your own, because Cardi B going to keep her a place to stay. She going to have a place to stay. She ain't losing her job. You got to know your stuff. You understand what I'm saying? Okay, that's why this is important. There was a two distinguishment between HPD and then New York public housing. The distinction is why the New York housing residents felt sidelined. HPD's enforcement tools and hearings are traditionally built to hold private landlords accountable, whereas New York City housing, public housing, acts as its own landlord and is technically not a city agency, often leaving the residents outside of HPD's standard oversight. And why did that cause a discrepancy? Because that's not explained. So when you're just getting up and you're speaking, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and everybody like, yes, yes, finally. But then you're not breaking down the differences and why and what's going on. And then people feel excluded. This is what's called omitting information. And when information is omitted, then people are not informed. That's why you guys got to get back to building community. You understand what I'm saying? You got to get back, like, use social media to your advantage. Build little small communities. Start researching. Start putting stuff together. This stuff is important, guys. If you don't know the laws concerning where you stay in your district, you're going to be left out. You're going to be busy, all up in Cardi B busy, all up in Nicki Minaj, all up in Offset, all up in everybody else business, Trump business, this business. Them people going to keep them a place to stay, boo. They going to keep them some money flowing in. You got to know your business, guys. I'm telling you. And you do that by building little small communities. All these friends y'all be talking, girl, let me tell you, did you hear about Cardi B? You should be saying, girl, let me tell you, get on Facebook, girl. Let me tell you what new law I found out. Girl, let me tell you about what's happening with my company. Girl, did you hear? They're about to have a layoff, girl. Let's see what we need to do to transition. Girl, what we need to do, girl? Let's put our thinking cap, girl, on. Girl. They talking about the company stocks going down. We need to be paying attention. Girl, did you hear? Girl, did you know in the neighborhood that they did a redistricting in the map and this is what's going on? Girl, did you hear about such and such? Girl, did you hear that new developers are coming in and they about to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G? Well, how is that going to affect us? I ain't saying don't gossip if you don't want to gossip. I'm just saying you better know how to gossip.